What's the difference between ADA, PADA, and IDE? If I'm not mistaken, these names all refer to the same technology. Are there any differences between them? If not, why does this technology go by so many different names?
IDE, Integrated Drive Electronics, was the original name, then they standardized on ADA, Advanced Technology Attachment, as being a broader standard that included additions like CD-ROMs and such. When SATA, serial ADA, came out, people started using PADA, parallel ADA, to refer to the older parallel connected bus, those using ribbon cable, to be more specific than the term ADA, which can refer to either. Both are part of the ADA standard, and use the same logical command sets, but SATA obviously has a different electrical interface. Both types of drives, SATA and PADA, are IDE devices. Source: PC Mag.
I found an interesting article here that explains the difference. It appears that it was actually called ADA, but IDE and PADA were just different names used by different branding. It just goes to show how much competition, and money, there is amongst computer-related companies to have their particular brand of the current technology accepted as the world standard. However, they all dipped out as plain old ADA became the accepted term. Once SATA was developed, it was named PADA. All in all, the ADA standard has moved through 7 recognized phases: ADA 1, 2, 3, etc., and in 2001 stage 7 ADA hard drives came once market, commonly called Ultra ADA 133. These could make data transfer rates of up to 133 MB per second, megabytes per second. ADA 7 is thought to be the last stage of development before serial ADA took over. At this stage, to make clear the distinction between ADA and the newer SATA standard, the older ADA standard was redefined and named Parallel ADA, or PADA.
Integrated Drive Electronics was the original marketing name to differentiate from when the electronics were on a separate board, SD506 and SD. But for example, SCSI drives also have their controllers integrated. So the standard was named that attachment for the IBM PC/ADA, which in turn meant advanced technology, but ADA is not advanced technology attachment. But IDE and ADA are synonymous. ADA is a better term. ADA became PADA, parallel, to differentiate from SATA, serial.
I will try to give complete answer. At the time of PCAT 286, there was only one bus in the system. This bus was called system bus or host bus. Nowadays it is known as ISA. All devices, including CPU itself, were connected to this bus: memory controller, floppy disk controller, keyboard controller, timer, etc. First HDDS consisted of 2 parts: disk controller, connected to ISA, and dumb disk. Controller, like any ISA-based device, was accessed by programmer using I/O and memory regions. It presented disk as blocks using head cylinder sector geometry and handled low-level things, like moving drive heads, by itself. ISA, controller, cable, dumb_disk. Compaq produced laptops at that time. They installed simple device to ISA bridge. This device is called host bus adapter, BA. Then, they moved controller to the disk drive and connected it to BA with ribbon cable. Please note, that BA is not controller, it is just an adapter. Controller was installed in disk. So, you can say that disk controller was connected to ISA with small 8 of adapter. ISA_bus BA ribbon cable, controller _and disk. That was the first time controller was integrated to disk, so they called it IDE, Integrated Disk Electronics. Later on, manufacturers created standard called an attachment, ADA, that described both physical connection, ribbon cable, and programming interface of controller, registers and their semantics. It is called an attachment because it was about attached disks to it bus, ISA. Every ADA device is IDE. But pre-ADA devices are not IDE, although every IDE device produced after early 90s is ADA. In the middle of 90th architecture changed. Instead of one bus they connected CPU to chip called North Bridge with bus called Front Side Bus. North Bridge was then connected to chip called South Bridge. They integrated ADA, HBA and ISA and keyboard controller and other low-speed devices into South Bridge. ADA stopped being an attachment at that time. But name remained. ADA had one problem: it was parallel. Each data line resided on separate wire. There were 40 wires in original ADA. Big number of lines limit speed because of crosstalk. First, they solved it by adding additional lines connected to ground, so ATA 4 Plus used 80 lines. But ultimate solution was to move to serial bus. It increased controller complexity, but gave engineers ability to increase speed. So, they created serial version of ATA called SATA. From then moment, old version was named parallel ATA or PATA. PATA is ATA. And SATA is ATA. But when people talk about ATA they almost always talk about old, parallel version of ATA, PATA. SATA can be ATA compatible, but they developed new version of PA called ASI, Advanced Host Controller Interface. ASI is controller, not an adapter from now. From that moment, we can say that SATA is readable bus, just like USB. That has two controllers. One controller resides on PSI, somewhere near communication hub. This is how they call South Burge now. Another one resides inside of disk, but this is complete different story.
Every SATA drive have an onboard chipset that compress and decompress the data transfer, whereas the PATA controller, onboard the motherboard, communicated directly with the drive's hardware before. SATA to motherboard the data is compressed, the motherboard then has its own chipset which turns the data from the SATA device back into decompressed binary for the rest of the computer. The same has to be done for data being passed from the motherboard to the hard drive. Any transfer to slash from the drives has to go through this process or neither components will understand the other.